Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So, a massive shout of thanks and appreciation first and foremost to new Patreon, Otto Skylark, also Phoenix Raising 86, Retro Bill, More Books, Cannabear, Fibre Oats, Bogey, Michael Kahn, Rob H, Ben White, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Mel B Styles, Troy Shuker, Harry Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Dal West Watson, Maria Nealands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
Pretty good, I must say. They're laying down the story, but I don't think you could binge watch it on Disney. No, you got to wait for them to release like the next one.
Fair enough. If you're into Star Wars, you're into Star Wars.
Yeah, the spaceships and everything. I try to ignore all of that.
Ignore all the spaceships in Star Wars. Okay, that makes perfect sense.
One day, Leia, you'll rule this planet. I'm watching for Ewan McGregor. He's a great actor.
Discord are really enthused by Neil's discussions.
Well, did you see the thing that 10th Man put out on Master B?
No.
It's like a little 2 or 3 minute video of the guy explaining how to get to the center of the Earth, celestial navigation, to the tangent point on a sphere.
We had it on the show yesterday.
I didn't see that. He showed that video on the show?
Yes.
It must have been when I stepped away. So I've been doing
everybody.
that. Morning.
Morning.
We both got paid too, so that's the thing.
Nathan, the longer I spend in here, the more I realize how much of a celebrity you are, man. And it's hilarious how much of a congregation you have of these people that just can't stand your guts, but they just hang out in your forum on this Discord channel. And it's just so funny to see the aggravation that sees in their souls while they still just try to like cull through your crowd. It's just so funny. I just wanted to just give you your props, man. You're doing great.
Not actually my server, it's Betty's server. So I have nothing to do with, other than using this room that you're in now. I literally have nothing, I don't moderate it, I don't use it. Obviously I use it, I'm using it now, but beyond this, I don't use Discord at all.
And see, that was my misunderstanding of the situation because I only found the channel just because I saw it was under the YouTube description on your videos. You know, I had watched it so many times and I was like, dude, I'm so interested in this. I want to get onto and I finally got a hold of Discord. So, but it's still hilarious that they come here and just, you're such a celebrity.
Can I have your autograph, Nathan?
Yeah, that's basic. I mean, it's like they almost are disgruntled fanboys that didn't get an autograph, is what it seems like. It's great.
Okay,
Don't you
well,
know they're here
that's
to be
nice.
entertained?
Wait a minute. Mic check. Good morning.
Hello. You're a bit loud.
Is oh, sorry.
What's up, Eli?
Am I tripping right now?
What, Sir
I don't
Nathan?
know if you're tripping or not.
Oh, nah, that the guy that's talking sounds a lot like ODD.
Oh, that's definitely not me. There's another guy in here named Don that I thought was ODD because he actually raps also, and he has a voice that sounds similar to him. Mine's just kind of
Gio?
raspy right now. Say again.
Okay.
Talking about Don Gio?
I don't know his last name. I just know his name's Don, and
Yeah,
he works with like speakers and subwoofers and amplifiers.
Don Gio.
Okay, yeah.
He's the boy himself.
There's a guy called Don Gio who works with speakers and subwoofers, did you just say?
Yeah,
Is he on our
you
side?
know him, Nate. Yeah, you know him, Nathan. He comes in. He's
Yeah,
talked to you about it before.
hold on. He's the one that came in drunk that time and kept
mean what?
apologizing for being drunk,
Oh, I
talking
don't
about the
remember that.
ether and things like that. Don Gio.
I
don't
remember
remember.
that episode. That was a good one.
Yeah, I don't remember. Sorry. I'm sure he'll jog my
You
memory when he
didn't
comes back.
miss
I'm
much.
good with voices when he comes on if I recognise his voice.
You didn't miss much. Just a drunk fool trying to talk about ether.
Oh, okay. Still, into subwoofers and speakers, so, all is forgiven.
Then he's on your team, right?
Yeah, just, I don't know. At the moment, because I recently bought a piece of PC equipment, YouTube just wants to serve me up videos about computers. But there we go.
Don Gio's okay. He's a good guy. He's just caught up in that ether, plays with magnets, listens to Ken Wheeler. But he comes here and he gets straightened out. It's like you go to a chiropractor to get your back adjusted. You come back on Flat Earth Debate and you get a little adjusted.
What's Mitch sending me? I recognise the picture in the thumbnail because I made it. FE Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app video of the day. Is it one of my videos? I don't remember using that as a thumbnail ever. Okay, let's have a look at this. Flat Earth, Sun, Moon, Zodiac Clock app. How heliocentrists use perspective to tell you that you're standing on a ball. Nathan Oakley, 1980. Okay. Is bifurcation the right word? Cutting in half of the protractor, this blue area, and calling it a celestial horizon, i.e. the flat plane that you're standing on. And then when you're measuring out to the sky, so if you ignore the labels on this diagram and just have this top line as the sky, then the star is going to get further away from your vantage point as it recedes towards the horizon. That looks something like this. So there's, I know it's pictures of the sun, but if you say it's Polaris, it makes no difference. As you back away from it, it'll recede towards the horizon. So you're taking an angle measurement to depict that. Well, the angle itself is come off a flat plane, but the tool that was used was how the globe was created, because they've then taken the arc of the tool and called it the surface of the ground that you were standing on at the centre of the tool when you were holding a sextant or a protractor in this instance, and measuring things with perspective, as Brian's just detailed, receding towards the horizon. In an orthographic representation, this is how that would look. From your perspective, you just see it going lower to the ground, or, obviously, further around this protractor, changing the angle measurement to it. But every one of those descriptions requires that you've got a flat baseline. This 0 to 180 degree line along the bottom of the tool, that's for flat Earth proof, right there. But they've hijacked perspective. Exactly, Brian. Okay. So it's a specific non-YouTube video, although it's published to YouTube because it's unlisted. So that means that it's a video of the day on the app, like he says. Well, very good. Thank you very much, Dave Weiss. Excellent stuff. Did you hear that?
Yeah, that was very good.
I appreciate you couldn't see it, and I appreciate it's just me.
I was watching the video.
Say again?
I was actually watching it because I didn't know that we were watching the same thing, and it happened to play the same exact time. So I was
Wow.
watching the
Yeah,
video.
it's Dave Weiss's video of the day, by the looks.
Pretty epic.
I didn't realise he stuck them out as unlisted. I'll have to ask him about that. What's the score with it being unlisted? Is it just so you can monitor the stats for how many people have watched it on the app? I assume Dave's pretty statistically minded, so I can only assume that's why he's done it that way, as opposed to just chuck it out on YouTube. Well, that might help my subscriber count then. Happy days. Should we have a look? Why not? Yeah, no. Not really.
Who was the guy that was speaking before about Discord?
About subwoofers?
Yeah, the guy who mentioned Don Gio. What's his name in Discord?
That was Fresh Green Flowers, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that was me.
Fresh Grown.
That was
You're
me,
flo-
Neil.
You're a florist or something then?
Okay.
Yeah, a legal cultivator, cannabis cultivator.
Oh, you grow cannabis?
Yes, sir.
You're a
That's
farmer.
why. That's his name. You can't say fresh grown weed.
You can these days, actually. Nobody cares.
Yeah, but
It's obviously a name chosen so he could peddle his business.
I was
Boo.
waiting for a pun.
Doesn't that make you a farmer?
That's a jacket I would gladly wear.
Yeah, nothing wrong with being a farmer. Very high suicide rates in farming.
Thanks for pointing
Tenth
that
man,
out.
keep it together. 10th man.
They're rolling through my mind right now.
Very high murder rates also, especially spousal.
I just plow through
It's
all
all
these
bad,
attacks.
When a crop goes
Wait a second.
bad,
Where you get your
everybody's having a
facts from,
bad day.
Nathan?
My folks used to live on a farm.
Yeah, that's why it takes a toll on people.
Yeah, but most of the surveys they take are on the spot.
There's very few people in this country have firearms, except farmers.
Yeah, don't mess with farmers.
There's what's the Hot Fuzz? Have you ever seen a Hot Fuzz? It's a British movie, reasonably large budget. It's about the British police force. Anyway, like it's a spoof action movie, but it's set in Gloucestershire, and they're all very thick accent farmers, basically. And in one scene, they have to take the guy who's the main character, who's like the newbie hotshot police officer, his partner, a senior officer, all to go to see one farmer, because the farmer speaks, "Hey, come over there, right over there," and then the senior officer says, "He said he's come from the farm and he came over there," and then his mate says, "He said the guy came from the farm and then headed over there." So he has to kind of translate it down the line to get it into English.
I remember traveling through a part of Spain where I had to stop and have an appointment.
That wasn't the end of my story.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. So the point of that is, while he's having this conversation, the guy stood there with a double-barrel shotgun over his arm. And the guy says to him, "Have you got a license for that gun?" And the farmer responds, through the translation, "Yes, for this one." He goes, "For that one?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, what other ones have you got?" And he opens the barn, and there's a full-on arsenal with bombs and machine guns, you name it.
That's funny.
Isn't that the Broken Lizard Club, I think is the name of that group that does those movies?
I don't know. Sean something or other. There's two guys that do various zombie movies. They did Shaun of the Dead. That was another one that those two guys did.
Yeah.
They did another one called Alan or something like that about an alien, which I've never watched.
They do have some good content.
I was going to share a story that so my son and I went on this appointment that I had, and I was living in Spain at the time, and we go to this one town in the middle of nowhere, and there's donkeys pulling carts. I mean, it's like you're back in the past, and I had to make a U-turn because the streets were weird to me, and there was a cop sitting there in this car, and he's laughing his head off as we're waiting for his donkey to. My eyes caught his eyes caught mine. I'm doing this illegal U-turn, but he don't care. And so we finally get to what we think is town, and we're supposed to go to the main office. We have this appointment set, but I don't know where the main office is. So we pull over to this guy, and my Spanish is iffy. My son speaks it well and understands it well at that time. So I asked the guy a question in my broken Spanish, like, "Where is this place?" And repite, say it again. And I look at my son, I go, "What's he saying?" He says, "Dad, I have no idea what he's saying." So we just sitting there and how do we get to this place? So the word for flag came up, and he pointed to the flag, which is always over the like the mayor's office where we were supposed to go. So that's the only way we found it, by one word. So I understand that slurring Spanish doesn't sound like Spanish.
Indeed.
So when we pulled in, the guy spoke English. The guy, I have an appointment with, of course. I said, "What is it with these?" He said, "Oh, did you stop and ask for directions from one of the people?" He started laughing his head off.
It's like that here in Scotland. If you go to Scotland, it's very difficult in some parts of Scotland to understand what they're saying. The dialect is just very, very thick. And if you're accustomed to it, you don't even notice it. But if you're not, you sometimes can't even understand. And they will get annoyed with you because they are speaking English. But if you just can't understand what they're saying because it's a really thick Scottish accent, they get quite irate, or at least in my experience.
Yeah, when I was in the military, I had a roommate that was extremely Cajun. That's what I'll say. He was extremely Cajun. And when he was speaking a form of English, but it was sort of like, what was that movie with Adam Sandler?
I don't know what Cajun is. Remind me.
What did you say? The
New Orleans.
New Orleans.
French American. Yeah, Louisiana.
Okay, I'm with you. Okay, go on.
Yeah, so for the first month we bunked together. I couldn't understand a word he said. We had to use hand signals, draw pictures and stuff like that. He couldn't understand me and I couldn't understand him because he just wasn't used to hearing my accent. I wasn't used to hearing his accent. And it took almost a month before we could understand each other.
I was away with a guy from Louisiana, and the COs used to call him the shuttle. And he used to say, "It's not the shuttle, it's des hotel. Des hotel." They used to call him the shuttle. His name was Des Hotel.
I thought you were asking directions for a hotel.
Nah, but I tell you, he was a fisherman. The size of this guy's calves were unbelievable.
Does
What
anyone
kind of
ever
couch?
notice how dialect seems to disappear when someone's singing a song?
Hang on, Neil. What kind of cows was he
Yeah.
raising?
Not necessarily. Listen to a few Chinese singers sing in English, and you won't necessarily think that anymore.
Well, that was the whole thing with the Beatles. When they came, they couldn't hear their accent when they sang, only when they spoke.
How do you miss such a good pun?
I didn't hear it.
It's
Somebody
good
was
to let
talking.
one go every so often. Let one into the
My goodness,
into
that
the
was
crowd.
like perfect.
Let the audience hear it. You are right though. The guy who just said that. Generally speaking, if you listen to Adele or someone like that, they'll train out their accent in the singing. You won't hear their rather common voice as Adele has.
And notice how Nathan just brushed aside the good pun.
Yes, intentionally.
I know.
I didn't even hear what you said.
It's the whole point.
You
That's
said-
the point.
No, I'm trying to, but Nathan keeps rumpusing me.
Intentionally, yeah. Right when
I
you
know,
try and
'cause
repeat the pun to ruin it. I want it to
You
get
don't
lost
want to
in the
repeat the
weeds.
pun. I know the rule. You don't repeat the pun. But it was so good.
Let it go.
I hate repeater.
Watch the show again. I get Nathan's
I don't
point.
want to either.
Can't believe Ray Liotta died.
Yeah, yesterday. Sad, eh? He's
We all
getting on a
died,
bit though,
Neil.
wasn't he? He must have been in his 70s.
67. That's like young now. Come
He
on.
wasn't even in his 70s. Yeah, that is quite young, I suppose.
Didn't he play in Goodfellas?
Yeah, he's the lead in Goodfellas.
Is that a question?
Yeah, is that why you like him? From the Goodfellas movies?
That's when I first seen him. I never knew who he was till that movie. Nathan, you're an actor, and if you remember that movie, he gets no credit for that one scene when Robert De Niro finds out that they killed Tommy, and he's beating up the phone booth, and he's just standing there, and he can't comfort him. I mean, how are you going to comfort that guy? And he's just standing there so awkward, and he goes to touch his shoulder, and he doesn't. If you watch that scene again, you'll appreciate what a good actor he was.
Yeah, but I've seen him do plenty of other films where he's total crap. Could be directing, could be script.
I agree.
Speaking of bad acting, anybody keeping up with the close of the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial?
No.
Oh, it was
Give us
epic.
Give us a summary.
Well, they're just egomaniacs. She wanted to go back on the stand, and there was no need to. But I think they're playing a very clever game of chess in that particular court case, in the regards that a lot of their very strong evidence was designed to come in later in the trial as rebuttal to some of the witnesses that they assumed their opponents would put up, but didn't. So there was some really strong evidence that just didn't make it in. So then they put, this is the claimant, put their client on the stand again, which is Johnny Depp in this case. And again, there was no need to do it. And a lot of people watching and commenting on it were of the same opinion as me. Yeah, he's not really moved the needle much in terms of anything really, but he hasn't done badly, and he's very charismatic and people like him, so why not? That was the logic while he was on. But then when Amber Heard retook the stand, again, no need to do it. But she saw him hogging the limelight and wanted to get back up there. So then, of course, she opens the door to all this different stuff that they can then challenge her on and get in that they hadn't previously got in via rebuttal, because the witnesses they thought they'd get it in with didn't go up and testify for Amber. So when she went up, they managed to get in all this really, really good evidence that previously hadn't been seen, right at the end of the testimony. So she was the last one on the stand, and it's closing out with this new evidence of her lying her ass off. Not only that, it got the best bit of it. Up until then, you had to kind of, if you were following along closely, appreciate that every single person that's disagreed with her is essentially, and I use my words carefully, being claimed to be a liar by Amber Heard. But she doesn't overtly state that. she's a bit weaselly with her words. So if you weren't that sharp, you wouldn't necessarily pick up on it. Obviously, all the lawyers watching pick up on it immediately and spell it out for you. You know, to believe her, you've got to believe that everyone that's told anything different's lying according to her. But she never really said that until she's spun a story about getting a caravan they've stayed in, a posh Hicksville caravan, all smashed up while she's getting assaulted. And the manager, previous manager, because he'd sold it, turned up unexpectedly. So they depose him, get him on the stand in rebuttal, and he just completely rips apart her entire narrative. While she's got the place being smashed up, he's saying, no, there's one lighting fixture broken. Now, coincidentally, she's actually submitted pictures of a single lighting fixture broken, but she's claiming the whole place has been smashed to pieces while she's getting assaulted. So he takes apart the narrative. He also spins her narrative that she's reacting to him getting jealous and saying he's going to break some girl's wrist around the campfire because he's jealous because Amber's had her head on her shoulder or something like that. That's the story she told. Whereas this guy, the hotel manager's like, nah, that weren't how it was. You know, he was spending most of the night with the other hotel manager, my colleague and employee, and they both played guitar together most of the night. She got snippy with him, and it descended into a row at point with her getting very snotty with him. That's the impression he got. So he's completely taken apart a narrative. Right, I've only given you all that information to tell you what happens next in closing in the final testimony from Amber Heard. She basically outright says he wasn't there. This is the former owner who's put them up, cleaned up after them, and, you know, he's testified under oath he was there and it wasn't like she said it was. As a result, she's basically said, he's a liar, he's only here because he wants fame, he wasn't even there. That's how overt she was about just saying, not only is he a liar, he wasn't even there, he owned the place. It's like you couldn't make this stuff up.
From what I've seen of the two legal teams, Amber Heard's legal team seems to be really good at representing a loser, and Johnny Depp's legal team, it's like they understand Amber Heard on a whole nother level. I think that was probably intentional when they put him back on the stand, just to antagonize her back onto the stand. Exactly.
That's what I meant when I said they're playing a very clever game of chess, because there's certain moves they've made that you're like, that wasn't necessary. But they did it with various different witnesses that weren't necessarily favourable or unfavourable to either, but did chew up a lot of time. So you're like, okay, they're playing a very clever game of chess, and they're very slick. You know, best lawyers in the world, they've got to be on Depp's side. I assume they are amongst the best lawyers in the world.
Can't take away from Amber Heard's side. They've actually put up a good case.
Oh, absolutely. Some people talk about them being crap lawyers, and you're like, no, you've got to understand the scenario that you're being faced with. Now you see the end game. To have kept some of the stuff out that they've kept out on legal arguments is outstanding. And, you know, I've been through court cases with horrible legal teams that just make your life shit, and they're one of them. But that's what they're being paid to do. And then every single time they get a little rise out of the opponent, they hold them to task on it. It's all very familiar, right? You like our opponents, jab, 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 nasty, 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 nasty. The minute you react, they're on the phone to the Rozzers or something, quite literally. It's just, that's the kind of standards you've got to deal with if you're onto a loser. And she's always been onto a loser. I don't think anybody's in any doubt about that now. I'm not saying anything that's not exactly public opinion. But it's nice to see that turnaround, considering that I've watched this for the last 4 years with mild to now increased interest, and seen what was a seemingly horrible situation. I don't care that he's a celebrity or that, who cares, he's got loads of money anyway. It's like, he's just a person, he's just a human being. He's been screwed over by some nasty, horrible woman. Scorned. That's it. Well, okay, to see the lies finally be laid out for the public who have been deceived into believing this guy's a monster, that's quite a nice and interesting ending when the lies that have been told are now really glaring to anybody watching. It's a nice little turnaround for Johnny Depp.
I thought it was...
Go on.
I thought it was interesting how they almost, and they did a good job at it, almost tied the idea of being drunk and smoking weed with beating your wife. It was almost like this.
That was their case.
Amazing.
So just their case is factually, drug addict and alcoholic equals wife beater. That is their case. Almost has succeeded in convincing. Go on.
When you hear them speak without rebuttal, you can almost believe it. Those people are good. They shouldn't take away from them by saying they're not. They have done the best they can with what they got.
Yeah, the lawyers that watch it describe her as being a bad client. And I would completely agree, because you can see certain things that when they're trying not to react, but they're, ripping hold of their arm because they can't help themselves. This is the Amber Heard solicitors. You can see that they've told her and advised her not to do certain things. And then when she does them anyway, they're just like, oh, you're making our life harder.
Yeah, pre-trial, they had that whole trial. They had it almost in the bag for her. The way they had jockeyed, they had all of Johnny Depp's previous relationships thrown out, and then Amber Heard takes the stage and gets them all put back in.
Exactly. I said that to my wife, because my wife has had absolutely no interest in it until the trial began, and now she's completely sucked into it, mainly because I can give her background information to it if she asks anything. But moreover, she's watching this stuff, and I said, look, the point that this trial will get interesting isn't while Johnny's giving his case. That'll be tedious. You might enjoy Johnny Depp on the stand, that's it. But the point that it'll get interesting is when Amber Heard takes the stand, because that is when she will lose her case. And that's precisely what's happened. You can spin it in as much glorious light as you like with the various different witnesses who have been well controlled and well trained by the legal team to say certain things, not say certain things. The arguments are being very tightly controlled in both a semantic and legal sense by their team. Everything's being kept in a very well-organised, structured manner, and keeping the opponents on their toes, keeping absolutely anything that might limit their chances of winning out. They've done well. Until Amber got on the stand. Then it just, then it just, obviously she's a blatant liar. Histrionic is a great word, because it isn't just a diagnosis, it's a way of describing how people become. Histrionic is how she behaved on the stand.
Hello.
Hey, Arwen.
So Amber Heard turned out not to be a globe after all?
Very funny.
Good morning, guys.
Hey,
Amber Turd is way more interesting than Flat Earth at the moment.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link, together with a thanks button in the info box below this video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Arwen, Chocolate Saiyan, Eli, 10th Man, Neil, Refracted Curvature, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Hello, hello. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good morning,
Nathan?
good morning.
Nathan, we better have a 4 more hours after show today. You've been cutting us short all week.
Yeah, Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. That's all that is.
Ooh.
Just before we started the live show, we were discussing Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, and then I think it was Owen was like, all right, so Amber Heard no longer rotates around the sun, or words to that effect. And John said, well, you know, at the moment, that is a little bit more interesting than the non-responsive, non-rebuttal that we're getting in regards to the flat Earth requirement for an elevation angle off a flat plane. I mean, we're getting nothing back from them because there's nothing for them to do other than take that angle from a flat plane and go from there. So, yeah, at the moment, slim pickings. Doesn't mean we can't be highly educational in terms of the standards of disseminating information in that regard. It's been very high at the moment. You can't deny that. Yeah, that's right, Nathan. We all agree. Really high standards. Yeah, I agree. That's what I've been thinking, and based on the comments, everyone else seems to agree. Glad you're all on form at the moment.
Any evidence of Earth curve?
Well, actually, I think they've heard that they need a depth correction.
Boom. Any evidence of Earth curve? Right on. Arwin, no. Did you want to do housekeeping for today, Arwin?
No, not necessarily. I'm just trying to encourage you to get back to flat Earth.
As of
And
next
not
week,
become an Amber Heard Earth.
It's flat.
Earth is flat?
Getting back to flat Earth. It's flat. Not
No
flat.
Earth curve then. Okay, we'll do housekeeping properly, just to satisfy Arwin. No more talk of Amber Turd or Johnny Depp. Okay, fine. Any
I'm
evidence?
leaving then. That's it.
Go on.
I just said I'm leaving then. I'm kidding.
Oh, right, that's it. I'm done then. Don't forget this. You're not talking about Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. They're giving closing arguments today.
Johnny Depp. Depp, correct.
Can I ask what time they give them closing arguments?
I don't know because of the time difference. Generally speaking, I let it play for about a couple of hours and then buffer it and then scan through the sidebars.
So you won't be rushing to get the show over with, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't want to get the show over with, as in I don't want to cut the show short. You'll still get a full 2 hours if you're a member daily. You know, that's never going to change. But by the same token, I'm not going to sit around for an hour hoping that when I know there is no rebuttal to the elevation angle argument, I'm not going to sit around thinking, well, they might have something. Back when it was Black Swan, you could sit around and there was still enough confidence on the opposing side for them to come in and go, the line's always bent, right? Given that at the moment they need a straight line. That's amusing to me. But they might have popped in, right?
Yeah.
Who's going to pop in now? All that they're doing, I've checked. All they're doing at the moment, because I've checked, because I was fiddling with sound settings and computer settings, I went into Discord a few times just to do that. And what I see is 2015 arguments that are just recycled when we're not there. That's what happens in Discord when we're not around. Nobody's attacking the elevation angle argument while we're not there. 50 people watching already. Something's going right. Oh, it might be because Dave Weiss has done an advert for me. Please share the show. Very warm welcome to all of you who've just joined us. Please smash that share button. Right, let's do housekeeping properly. Arwin started us off, but we'll do it again. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
You know, that used to be the only straight line in the whole heliocentric religion was to the horizon.
No, but it wasn't really straight, right? In their model.
I'm looking at the screenshot that on Nathan's gallery, I guess. And shout out to Nate. Should have asked about gas pressure because look at that container.
Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
They are literally in the chat right now trying to claim that you do not need a container to have pressurized gas.
See? Told you. 2015 arguments will come from the chat skanks. What about the elevation angle argument? Your model that you think doesn't need a container around it has been devised from a flat plane, chat skanks. Maybe you could address that. We've addressed containers for 5 years. What about the elevation angle? Your model needs a flat Earth to get dual radii.
No, but how about with the container argument? How about an actual demonstration, not just the assumption that we are without a container?
It violates several laws of gas. Natural laws are violated when you say you don't need a container. Yes, you do. It's the V in PV equals nRT. It violates the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy increase, the gas would fill the space.
Talking
again,
about court cases and evidence, the globe wouldn't go down very well in court, would it? Because there's no evidence whatsoever to support it.
It wouldn't go down at all. Look, gas expands in all directions.
No, I mean a court case for the globe. We're talking.
Yeah, I heard you.
All right. Boom, boom.
Any evidence?
It'll just be circular reasoning in court.
Speaking of circular reasoning, any evidence of the R value, Earth radius?
Well, they can't really measure it anymore, so they can only derive it based on the assumption that the Earth they're standing on is spherical. Then they derive it from a certain length based on their map projections derived from the celestial sphere, projected on the flat Earth, and then they take that length and then they calculate a radius value. That's the only way they can do it now. They can't actually measure it.
So you're saying you're going to need a flat plane for that?
Well, not necessarily, but they did use a flat plane to get it, you see?
That's the same thing as needing a flat plane to get it.
That makes
sense. But look, if the Earth were a globe, then you probably wouldn't need a flat plane to get it. But they did get it using a flat plane, you see?
Owen's got this irritating way of agreeing with you while sounding like he's arguing.
It's my specialty.
Yeah, your tone says no, but your words say yes.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Obviously, Google Earth, is that recognised by the heliocentrists?
No, not since 2017, when they explicitly told us that Google Earth was not their model, in no uncertain terms.
Thank you.
So we were in a discussion about the Isle of Man, and when we assumed that the Earth had a geometric physical limitation called Earth curve that was calculable in those maths, we would compare the elevations of particular locations for viewing based on Google Earth elevations, just because that's what everybody used. But then when they didn't match up with the maths, they were insistent that that wasn't fair or reasonable, and that Google Earth, even though there's a pro version of it that's sold and used for exactly that purpose, with elevations being used and maintained, besides that, they said it wasn't acceptable. Now, we went to the Ordnance Survey maps that they said were fine, and the same thing happened. It didn't match up with their maths. But then we ended up with, varying rates of refraction and their curve calculators changing. And what's the other guy called? George something or other, that had a different calculator that had refraction incorporated with literally a sliding scale. So anything that's anywhere can match Earth curve maths if you want it to. Those were all as a result of us debating at the Isle of Man with heights taken from Google Earth. Part of that along the way was them decrying Google Earth and saying it's not our model, that's not our model. Meanwhile, if you actually look at an elevation profile in Google Earth, what you'll find is that Earth is flat. It's measured that way and shown to be that way in terms of the very accurate, used professionally, measurements in Google Earth that show it on a plane. There's no 8 inches per mile squared drop. Elevation profiles show you just how flat Earth is, and you can do them over thousands of miles and show just how Earth is very, very, very flat.
It is at ground level now, because we figured out, wait, but remember when they still had an actual at ground spherical application? And then we just pointed out, wait, but we are standing right here according to this map, and we can see the other side. It's not obstructed. And then they suddenly started changing those things.
Indeed.
Remember that?
Yeah. A lot of changes to Earth curve calculations before we realised that it's a begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator were altered as a result of our discussions.
Yeah, on a day-to-day basis, like we would be discussing and be like, "Oh wow, check this out. This is all so weird." And then the next day, it's like, "Wait, they changed it."
Yeah,
those were the days.
Right, specific functionality about Google Earth changed on the fly while we were debating using it. It was a crazy time. But no, they don't, to answer your question, ever claim that that's their model. They'll decry it, in fact. And if they do, just draw out an elevation profile and say, why is it showing that there's absolutely no drop anywhere on Earth in this professional tool?
Arguing about the amount of Earth curve you don't see.
Yep.
Why would you expect to see it?
Well, no, I mean, how can you win that argument?
Shout out
If you're saying there's varying amounts of Earth curve, then you're still talking about Earth curve.
No, they're talking about evidence of curvature. They never say Earth curve. They say evidences.
That means proof. Any evidence of a container for the endless and lofty imagination of a glober, formerly known as a head, says Godzilla from the super chat. Thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate your support. Got your first slide.
Did you do Coriolis yet?
We've got a slide up. I don't know why. I think we're talking about elevation angles.
No, I just posted some slides for the panel to study. That's all.
Let's ask the question. Any evidence you can acquire an elevation angle from a curved baseline?
No, impossible. Even they agree with that.
Well, unless you're going to apply like bent line geometry, right? And then you can have a triangle that's bent partially. But yeah, that's not as useful though for coordination as actual straight line angle triangles. So yeah.
Well, I guess they could say they don't need to.
What geometry straight lines to measure distances?
It's curved geometry.
More celestial navigation. If I would, you broke up halfway through. I think I heard your question though.
You're using straight lines to measure unknown distances with angles, right?
Yes.
You got to use straight lines.
Yes.
The curved line, because you can't know the distance of that.
Right.
That's correct.
And that's why it's so problematic if they're going to use curved lines in their angles and triangles. Oh yeah. Oh, now you can't really use it to coordinate anymore. Now can you? Because now it's all bent. And all those old principles, the original math guy, what's his name again?
Shout out to Mike808 who just gives me money. I think when that happens, the super chat's either too rude or Google have decided that it's not appropriate. So then the super chat goes through, but just with no text. So thank you for the super chat, although we can't read it, Mike. Thank you very much indeed.
Right. Pythagoras, right? If you're going to use your triangles and angles with like curved lines, then all those useful things and tricks that Pythagoras like evolved, like figured out for us, yeah, that doesn't really work anymore. So how are you actually going to measure things, coordinate things on this spherical surface if you can't use straight angles?
Well,
what's more fundamental?
Well, that's a nice segue into 10th's first slide. So what curved surface in terms of this diagram on screen now? You've got the celestial sphere around you in terms of it being like a protractor at your position to measure out an angle to a star on the flat roof. But of course they will put the star on the edge of the protractor. So in the case of this diagram, I'll let you go in a sec, 10th. This is your protractor. This highlighted yellow area with north and south. Well, there's you, and here's the flat plane that you're standing on. But this is literally just like a protractor. Let's just go back to my video from Dave Weiss, actually, as it shows that exact thing somewhere in the video. There we go. So I'll play this in a minute and plug Dave Weiss for putting my video, or putting a video he made up on his Sun, Moon and Zodiac clock app. So here we have my diagram of it with the protractor and then the stars along a flat roof. moving along it with you measuring an angle out to it. But then when we go back to 10th diagram, why do they put the star on the edge of the protractor? Well, because they're going to pretend that this is the surface of Earth, that's why. But you're not standing at the surface in this diagram. In the celestial sphere model, you're standing at the centre of a celestial sphere, i.e. what you see in terms of what you measure on a protractor could be perceived as moving away from your position along an arc. But that is merely the measurement tool, i.e. where this line continues would reach a flat roof. And it must be flat because you're going to be drawing a box parallel to the ground when you do these measurements. So this protractor is very literally the hijacking of a tool measurement of the stars and turning it into a globe surface. That is precisely what is being done. Do you want to start with this slide, 10th, and talk about whatever you
okay,
want?
Yeah, that's fine. But before I do, I just want to remark to what Arvin was saying. The fundamental principle in celestial navigation is what tool are you using at sea when you're shooting the horizon? The most stable thing you have there, because you can't see any land. And it's called the sextant. And the sextant is an angle measuring device. So as John said, you need two straight lines. So let's go on. So as Nathan said in this first slide, you could see the model of the celestial sphere, and the yellow shaded area there is actually a protractor, as you'll see before the slide's end. Next slide, please. So it's basically the language that I learned by studying this. The meridian is a great circle, and it's a slice of that sphere, let's say. You can see the 90-degree box there at the center. You can see how the angle is measured. If you were to swerve this circle to where it's all yellow, then you'd be looking at a side-on view of it. But it still have to be this 90, this right angle. They can't get away with 90, right angle, or perpendicular. That's the way the angle is achieved. But they're telling you it's happening on the outer edges of a sphere where it's a curved baseline. Well, there's no such thing as a curved baseline. So you can't be getting it from there, meaning a sphere actually. So you must be getting it somewhere on a sphere where it must be flat. Well, all they do is cut it in half and run a meridian through it. And the sun is somewhere on that meridian, or a star is somewhere on that meridian, and you might be on another meridian. Next. So here you got two great circles, and that's anything cut through the radius. And then you've got small circles that don't intersect at the radius. Well, the angles are never achieved from a small circle. It has to come from great circles. So it's always a meridian, a great circle cut through the radius. Let's go next slide. And so here's a depiction of it cut in half. There's your equatorial plane. And then that's one great circle, the equatorial plane, that yellow. And then you see two meridians that are shown only half. X and Z and W and Y, you could see those would be great circles because they would cut through the radius of the sphere if we lived on the sphere, but they don't. So they stop right there at the equatorial plane. Y and W stop right there. Next. Here's another picture of it. This time they do show it going underneath the equatorial plane, but it's always measured from the horizon up, like the protractor would. So you never do this underneath because there is no underneath. But they have to show it this way with the trickery of the images to make you think you live on a globe. And you can see it clearly here. It's a great circle, and it's cutting through the Earth, and it's got the equatorial plane in white as well as the shaded area going to the celestial sphere. Again, more trickery with images. Next slide. So we got this same picture up again. As you can see, I'm about to make a point here. The yellow area is going to be a protractor. Next slide. So cut out the above protractor, including this gray dashed box, to use in the angle of incidence experiment. Fold on the 180 line. The red arrow points to 90. At the equator, the sun is at 90 at both the spring and fall equinoxes directly overhead. During the solstices, the equator, the sun is either 23.5 degrees north or 23.5 degrees south from directly overhead. Obviously, do you see the flat baseline? The only way you get an angle. Next slide, please. So here's another image that shows that equatorial plane. It shows the observer's meridian, a great circle sliced through their imaginary globe, and then the solar noon meridian, another great circle sliced through the meridian, but it won't work unless they have equatorial plane giving the 0 and 180 line. You might as well just put a protractor on this thing, because
Right,
that's
no,
exactly
just while you're
what
on
it
this
is.
slide, sorry
Yeah,
to
go
interrupt.
on.
The sun and the Polaris depiction, although they're not parallel on the roof, they're not placed on the protractor like in previous images. So a bit more like what I originally described. So with the stars not sat around the protractor on the roof. That's how the current slide I'm on looks, with the sun not put on this curve. I'll just show you what I mean for the audience. If I go back a few slides, I think it was this one. Was it that one? No, it wasn't.
I don't mean to be objecting, but where does the idea of a flat roof come in?
When you're doing it, you've got a box that you're going to be drawing out, haven't you?
On the ground, for sure, yeah.
I could take a stab at that.
Okay,
Nathan.
Hold on. I see your point, because it is making an assumption that isn't actually required to be made. Got to be careful. You're right. However, it doesn't have to be placed on the outside edge of the protractor, does it?
Well, yeah, you're just using the arc of the angle. You're not using a box at the top.
We don't know where they're positioned, but we know that they match up with those angles that we take on the ground. But what I'm saying is we know that they don't match up with them moving over your position in an arc in line with the tool that I place over it. What I mean by that is, let's just go back to this picture. We know that the sun isn't going to reach 0 and hit the ground. Do you know what I mean? If you travelled over to its GP, it would still be above the ground. Whereas if you assume that the marked position at 90 above your head is at the top of the protractor, and then it curves downwards towards the ground as it does in your perspective view, that's how they depict it on, let's just go back to it, this image. So you've got polar axis, and then you've got North Celestial Pole perched on the edge of the protractor. Well, what I'm saying is, I'll have to figure out a way of phrasing this better. It doesn't have to sit on the edge of the protractor. By the same token, it doesn't have to be on a flat roof either, which is your point, and I think it is a good point. I don't have to make that claim or make that assumption. It doesn't alter the angle. But I can say that you don't have to perch it on the edge of the protractor, which is what they do in a lot of the diagrams.
Well, yeah, and by saying the roof is flat, you're almost making the same mistake as they do when they bring the arc of the protractor to the ground.
Agreed.
We don't know anything about the sky.
I agree. It's my ignorance. It's nice to have it pointed out before I've said it too often to not be able to say, okay, I need to rephrase that. Very few people have picked up on it or will have picked up on it beyond you, John. But you're right. Why am I making that assumption? Well, I don't need to, do I? I can describe how it's incorrect to describe the sun in the celestial sphere model actually up against the protractor, because you don't know its position. You know its angle only. And it's useful to know its position above the ground if you are at its GP. But between those two, you can't be, because you can only be at one or other position, either with the sun directly above your head or measuring an angle to it. Either way, it's not moving along the edge of the protractor you're measuring it with. Shout out to Mike808, who says, I'm almost hurt by the assumption, just showing appreciation. So I think he gave me money without a super chat, and I said, he must have put something rude. Obviously not. I was totally incorrect. Why would I make such an assumption? Thank you for both super chats, Mike808. Also, thank you to Godzilla37, who says, another the more you know for Nathan. If you use bad words in a super chat, it won't go through at all. Not just drop the text, but rather block you completely. Source, expert, super chatter. Thank you very much, Godzilla. Really appreciate the support, and thank you both of you for super chats. Really appreciate it.
Yes.
full of assumptions today, aren't you, Nathan?
Tenth's in the middle of a presentation that I interrupted and have now hijacked.
Yeah, but I will cover John's question and your so-called assumption. I just added 2 more slides to do that. So let's go on. So I see the slide you're on. We've covered it. Go to the next slide.
This
Here,
looks
the final
rude.
picture of
This looks very rude.
What?
Look at what the guy's doing.
What is he doing?
Doesn't matter. Let's move on. Forget I said anything.
All right. The final picture of an incoming solar radiation might look something like figure 2.4 below, where a protractor has been used to draw a line demonstrating the incoming angle of solar radiation for July 14th at 49° north latitude. What's obvious about what is the admission here about getting angles? That
This doesn't all come in parallel.
I mean, it's just a protractor has to be used with a 180 straight angle baseline.
Oh, that goes without saying. It's proving Earth's flat. You should have gone to that first.
It's so comical that they have to use the protractor to get the angles, and then they say they can be achieved from a curved baseline, which is impossible. This slide is devastating. Okay, next slide. Next 2 slides will hopefully make clear the last discussion between John and Nathan. So basically, this is the box we're talking about. And it's if you're looking at the co-altitude from the observer's zenith, which can be achieved with a plumb bob and a protractor, okay? The point is, in celestial navigation, we covered this yesterday, but it's worth doing it again. You have to use the horizon. So you use a sextant before you go to your co-altitude. You got to get an elevation angle. It shows there that blue is the star and the GP, the star on the Earth. The red would be the zenith position and the GP of the observer. And this box is created every time. Now, the reason the flat sky thing came out the wrong way is going to be demonstrated in the next slide, and then we'll come back to this and go back. So go to the next slide. It's because if you were going to do an angle of depression, if the observer was like at the zenith to where that reference line has to be drawn. So in this case, B is the star and C would be the GP of this. No, I'm sorry, they got it backwards here, so I got to go the other way. A is the star and F is the GP of the star. C is the observer and B is his zenith. And he needs a reference line. That doesn't mean the heavens have a shape. It just means that's the way you get the zenith angle, the co-altitude. So both need a reference line, both need a flat base, and both have the same angles. John, do you see what I'm showing here?
Well, the co-altitude is subtracted from the 90 at the ground, is it not? You're talking about taking the angle from the star, which no one's ever done.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the angle, if you just do without the horizon, you can just get the zenith angle with a plumb bob and the protractor upside down.
You're missing his point. Hold on, 10th. If you take this diagram, right, you've got, let's take F, A, and C. Yep. So the right angle on the left-hand side of the triangle. Now let's move A down to the next box down. Yeah? So for the audience's benefit, A is being moved down. In other words, we're decreasing the angle that we're going to measure from C. You with me so far? We're going to draw out the same box, but instead of A being at the in shaded areas, there's 3 boxes. Instead of having 3 shaded boxes going up vertically, we're going to have 2 shaded boxes and a smaller angle to see. Are you with me?
I'm trying to, but go on.
Well, when we do that, I measure a lower angle. In essence, yes, we've still got a flat line to the roof, but the roof's now been lowered. And it only occurred to me when Brian debunks the idea that we could measure an angle to the moon or the sun or whatever it is that flat earthers have claimed in the past, because obviously as it goes nearer to the horizon, you're lowering the roof line because the angle's decreasing. The maths doesn't change, but the height does, if you were to claim there was a height. So if I'm to say there's a roof, Well, that would mean it's static along the same route. Well, we don't know how the heavens operate. We know the angle's consistent. We know we can track it and figure out where the GPs are, and it corresponds with the angle to deduct from 90 to get the distance. We know all that to be true, and it functions. However, that doesn't mean I can make a claim about the roof, does it?
Correct. Well, that's my point. That's what I'm trying to say. Whether you're doing an elevation angle or an angle of depression, you're going to need, because they're both angles, you're going to need a flat baseline and a reference point. So the A and B is the reference point for the angle of depression was my only point I was trying to make.
Well, my point is that the elevation angle is measured. It's measured within a convention, but that's what measurements are. The angle of depression is calculated from that measurement. So I guess it's not a huge point. I mean, you'd probably be onto a loser if you wanted to fight with somebody over the geometry of it. But I think it's important to note when you're talking about, like, we don't know what the sky is. We only know what it does repetitively. We don't know what it is.
Exactly. We don't need to know what the sky is.
Well, you don't.
It's a flat baseline, and that's it.
That's correct. That bit we can know for certain.
That's the important part.
That's right, Neil. It's a flat baseline regardless, and you're operating on the ground and achieving your ends at the end of the measurement. So yes, you can say that with certainty, but we're not talking about that this second in amongst ourselves when there's no one here to challenge us about the requirement for a flat plane. We're now moving on to the not flat roof. We don't know what it is. We just know that at a given time we can predict where it will be above that particular navigation star. And based on that, the angle will correspond to it, and you can minus it from 90 and get the distance. Okay, that's what we know. But that doesn't give us anything about how they operate, why they do that, what they are, what their height is. It doesn't give us any of that.
Oh, that's right. You think one day you'll be able to vary and manipulate a star. I forgot.
Nobody's claiming science. We're just saying in terms of the mathematical derivations. That's what John just made clear. The measurements and how they work and the predictability of where a star will be above in a given time. That's what we're utilising with past experience and knowledge and being able to document where and when that'll happen. This star will be above this part of the land or sea at this time. Well, if you can measure an angle to it, you can figure out how far away you are from it. But that angle to it doesn't tell you the height. In fact, it radically alters in that measurement as you move further and closer to it. If you could do so if with it fixed, i.e. not continually moving. But if you, for the sake of discussion, move further away from it, right, that's going to lower the angle, reduce the angle. Well, does that mean it's come down? Does that mean the roof's lower? Obviously not. What roof? We don't know what the hell it is. What is the star? I don't know, but I know the angle to it will match with its corresponding GP. That much I do know.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying sometimes that was the whole thing with ballers. They would always look to the sky and tell us what the Earth is. And now it seems like we're doing it a little bit.
Yeah, and we're
just to find out what the stars are.
We were, but now we're, what's the word? Self-policing? Is it self-policing?
Okay.
Yeah, that's what that would be.
Which is how it should be. And you should have well, it's me in this instance, so I can say this. You've got to have a degree of humility. No, I'm wrong. My approach is incorrect. My logic is flawed. I must correct this. Thank you, John, for pointing this out. As opposed to, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Getting very defensive, which does often happen.
Yeah, you got too high of standards.
Say again, Chocolate?
I said your standards are too high. Apparently.
Yeah, how can we have any evidence of anything?
No.
Your standards are too high.
That's not too high. John, would you agree that this proves Earth is flat?
Obviously.
Would you agree that you could use this and demonstrate how Earth is measurably flat?
Well, it shows that the aspect you're utilizing to get the measurement must be flat.
Better phraseology.
They use the same angles.
Right. So, would you agree that Earth is navigatably flat? John?
Well, it has to be. Because it works.
Right. So these are positive assertions that we can take forward. Our standards being high aren't... That's not a high standard to say this is wrong. If it's wrong, there's a sky height, there's a roof, and everything's along... That's wrong. I can't say that. Why would our standards be high? For the longest time I've known us run this show together, anybody that comes in from any side, any aspect, with any belief that they might have, will get pummeled if what they say is wrong. Why would I be any different?
I think he's mocking, what's his name, Sin Cleanser, that's all.
Nobody's mocking anybody. It's just correcting me on an assumption I've made. We all fall
Talking
into
about
it.
chocolate.
Oh, chocolate. What did you say again, chocolate? Sorry.
I was the one that said your standards are too high.
Oh, if I'd have known it was you that said it, I'd have paid more attention to the sarcasm. It's not having high standards, it's just being wrong or right and correcting each other on it. And there's nothing personal in doing so. In fact, that's where thanks should be given. If you've got something wrong, isn't it something to rejoice when you get it right finally? You know, if you're a bit embarrassed about it, just have a laugh at yourself. Don't take yourself so seriously.
Well, that's why I like the show, because you do show humility. When you're wrong, you say you're wrong.
Yeah, also, John's a prick. How dare he humiliate me on my own show?
That's funny.
Just call me a baller. Like, that's happened several times now.
Can you go to the last slide I just put up, Nathan?
Yes, we interrupt this banter for a continuation of the presentation it interrupted. Go ahead.
All right, in this image, you can clearly see you've got the zenith of the observer, and the dark line is the zenith angle. You've got in the dotted line the elevation angle that the observer would get by using the sextant, and then minusing from 90 to get the zenith angle. If you can establish vertical, this is the argument here, you can establish that zenith vertical, guess what you have to assume in order to get the zenith angle?
Flat Earth.
Perpendicular. It's a perpendicular. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be flat. You can't get that angle without the assumption, because if you get vertical and you need an angle, that means it's perpendicular to your reference that you're using. So whether you're using a sextant at sea using the natural horizon and going in the two-step method, which is the elevation angle in the dotted version, and then subtracting, or you have a plumb bob with a protractor, you get your perfect vertical, you have to assume the other to be totally flat all the way to the GP of that star or luminary. That's how devastating this argument is.
Epic. Thank you. We got there in the end. A couple of shouts to the over 100 people watching. So thank you very much for joining us. If you have only just done so, please share the show. And a massive thank you to all of you who shared the show, because that's why there's 100 people watching. So really appreciate all of you who've smashed that share button. What else was I going to say? There was something else I've forgotten now. That was what I was going to do. I was going to give Dave Weiss a big shout out. So Dave Weiss released this video on the Sun, Moon and Zodiac Clock app today. Anybody object if I play this? No? Well, I'll play it then.
No, play it.
Josh.
Is bifurcation the right word? Cutting in half of the protractor, this blue area, and calling it a celestial horizon, i.e. the flat plane that you're standing on. And then when you're measuring out to the sky, so if you ignore the labels on this diagram and just have this top line as the sky, then the star is going to get further away from your vantage point as it recedes towards the horizon. That looks something like this. So there's, I know it's pictures of the sun, but if you say it's Polaris, it makes no difference. As you back away from it, it'll recede towards the horizon. So you're taking an angle measurement to depict that. Well, the angle itself is come off a flat plane, but the tool that was used was how the globe was created, because they've then taken the arc of the tool and called it the surface of the ground that you were standing on at the centre of the tool when you were holding a sextant or a protractor in this instance, and measuring things with perspective, as Brian's just detailed, receding towards the horizon. In an orthographic representation, this is how that would look. From your perspective, you just see it going lower to the ground, or, obviously, further around this protractor, changing the angle measurement to it. But every one of those descriptions requires that you've got a flat baseline. This 0 to 180 degree line along the bottom of the tool. That's for flat Earth proof, right there. But they've hijacked perspective. Exactly, Brian. So might as well leave the plug to roll at the end. This is Dave Weiss' Sun, Moon and Zodiac Clock app. And on it he's got a section, a tab that you can go to, and he's got all different playlists on there. Kept up to date. I keep one up to date, so I've got one on there that says Flat Earth Debate. Whenever I make a shorter video, I'll stick it on, and it automatically updates on the Flat Earth Clock app. I didn't realise it had been shortened now. I thought it was the full Flat Earth, Sun, Moon and Zodiac Clock app if you're looking it up. But it might just be the Flat Earth Clock app now. Maybe you shorten the title. Either way, thank you very much to David Weiss for promoting me. I really do appreciate it. Say again, Alwyn?
No, it was Neil. I said, is that Metallica in the background? The music.
Is he? It sounds like he's keeping up with the celestial sphere argument a bit. Is he going to incorporate that into his models?
Into his model?
No, his model. You know, Dave likes models. He likes using them to educate, which is fine. Is he incorporating the celestial sphere into that educational tool?
Maybe it already is. I don't know. Have you looked at it?
No, I didn't. But it in that debate he had with not a Professor Dave, I don't think it got brought up.
I tried to hustle Dave onto the show and was unsuccessful. Should I contact the guy he spoke with, Sean Atwood? Anybody here a Sean Atwood fan?
Yeah, he's the guy that was in prison.
Yeah, the British guy.
I think he would probably come.
Well, not necessarily come. I mean,
you
he might want me on his show. I will invite him on here and see how it goes. I mean, it's rude and presumptuous to say, hey, can I come on your show? But yeah, I'll get in touch. Before I do, obviously, I've got to get in touch and see if I can build some sort of rapport with the guy. But that's what I'll do, if you think it's a good idea. I like Sean Atwood.
Just tell him Sammy the Bull sent you. He'll let you in.
But Sammy the Bull did not send me.
You don't know that.
So I should lie to him. That's a great start, Neil. How long did you spend in jail?
If you say Sammy the Bull sent you, he might think you're horning in.
Well, I think the Sean Atwood guy is a good example of a baller. And then he had Professor Dave, which he's on the edge of being an anti-flat earther, I think.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't see why he wouldn't be willing to at least have you on his show if he doesn't want to come here, because he is at least interested in the topic enough to have a debate on it.
Indeed, but in order to achieve that, I'd first have to build some sort of rapport with the guy. So I might attempt to make a start on doing that, i.e. drop him a line.
Did you say you tried to get Dave onto this show?
Not a Professor Dave. Professor Dave Explains YouTube channel. Yes, I tried to get him on. Yeah, Sean Atwood. Why not? He was the only reason I paid any attention to that. So there's plenty of people going out talking to all sorts of people that are anti-flat earth, globers or flat earthers, and generally speaking, I'm not kept abreast of it unless you guys come and tell me about it. However, that crossover was why I had a mild interest in it, because of my interest in Sean Atwood, as opposed to my interest in... Same goes for Dave Weiss, actually, when he went and chatted to him initially. So I was like, all right, you're chatting with Sean Atwood. Because I know Dave gets around, but I don't see him getting around. Do you know what I mean? I see him republishing his videos on his interviews channel. But as a general rule, I'm not, keeping tabs on where Dave goes and keeping up to date with all of his interviews on other people's channels. But seeing him on Sean's channel, I was like, oh, this is nice. Which makes me think, well, my initial interest was because of Sean. So shouldn't I get in touch with Sean? That would make more sense to me.
Which Sean?
Sean Atwood.
Ah.
Can I bring it back to the topic of perspective and vanishing point?
Were we talking about that? We weren't really talking about that. We were talking about how it wasn't that with the flat roof. But yeah, I see what you mean.
No, it's just going to relate. At least in my mind, it relates. When you're looking at the horizon, let me clear my throat for a minute, please.
Please share the show. Smash that share button. It'd be great to get to 150 people watching.
When you're looking at the horizon and you see where the sky meets the sea, you see clouds. Now, clouds look like they're touching the ocean at the furthest distance you're looking at. We know they're not. It's perspective. It's the vanishing points. It's all our eyes could do to see that far. I mean, we've covered this before with the Rayleigh criteria and all this other stuff. So not being an expert on it, but just casual knowledge would tell anyone that the clouds are at 10,000 feet or whatever distance over there as they are where you are. They're not actually touching the ground. But when you look at the sun, it's the same imagery. The clouds are directly above you. The sun's directly above you. As the sun moves towards the horizon, it lowers in the sky. As the clouds move towards the horizon, they lower in the sky. And so this is what we have to deal with our eyes. Now, the clouds aren't touching the ocean. They're still 10,000 feet over there. The sun isn't touching the ocean. It is whatever height it is. And we can get an angle measurement to it, and that's how celestial navigation is done. That's my point.
Shout out to Mike Jones. He says, nice to hear the, quote, flat roof dropped. Finally. Thanks. There you go. So straight away, John's got appreciation for giving me clarity on my nonsense that I was spewing. Thank you for the super chat, Mike. Really appreciate the support. And thank you, 10th.
Have you ever had a show where you went over what measurements are and why they're like one of the major, like when you're talking about what is, measurement is like right next to science in the facts department.
Careful. You might give the wrong idea to some globe believers.
Oh, that measurement and science are really, yeah.
That's Phil Bill thinks that. Phil Bell thinks that.
You're talking about what, John, I assume you're talking about is physically measuring things.
Yeah, that's implied within the word measurement, though. You know, it's not a measurement if you're not doing it in reality.
So since it's Friday, you guys want like a funny throwback clip?
Yeah, go on. You're going to stick it in Master B?
Yeah, I'm sending it right now.
Okay.
You want me to preface it with anything, or you want to just... Well, I'll say what it is real quick. So it's actually in 24/7. I think it was 2 years ago, because YouTube will sometimes have old videos. So I clicked on it, scrolling through it, and I got a clip of Kosho telling us that nobody says that boats go over the physical geometric horizon. That's not the Earth curve. And then by the end of the clip, he's saying, well, it is the Earth curve, but that's not the horizon we see. It's great.
Let's have a listen.
I think it was right after the Black Swan.
I was going to say this is going to be right after the Black Swan because they hadn't quite got their bearings yet. And, you know, nobody says the horizon's Earth curve was the last example of that because Tim Osmond disappeared for a while. And then when he came back, didn't understand the argument, had it laid out for us, by us, his rebuttal was to say nobody claims the horizon is Earth curve. Or to put it another way, nobody claims there is any Earth curve to be seen.
And show pictures.
And then, and then bring up pictures of the horizon with the title, This is Earth Curve. Have you sent it? Chocolate?
It should be a Master B. It's only a minute long.
It's not.
I think you can put
24/7.
No, it's not
24/7. So there are a few people in there. It's not there yet.
No, it's not coming through. Not on Master B. You stick it in the war room.
It's loading.
I get this stuff sometimes. Stuff just doesn't want to go through on Skype, and it says sent at your end. And it doesn't
Yeah,
appear.
Skype is crazy.
Okay, well, when
it's in there when you want to play it.
As soon as it props up, I'll play it. Should we move on with housekeeping?
Sure.
Any evidence? Oh, right, on to Q.
I want to know why for all these fucking years we were told that boats were going over a physical geometric horizon, aka the curve.
Nobody said that. Nobody said they're going over the physical geometric
said
horizon.
that.
Fucking did.
They said it's going over.
Yeah, nobody said that. They said the physical horizon. Be honest with
They
yourself.
never said it's going over
physical geometric horizon.
horizon. They said it's going over the
No,
curve.
the chocolate. I want you to be honest with me. Did anyone ever say they're going over the physical geometric horizon? Or they say the physical horizon?
The curve of the earth.
The curve of the earth?
That's right. The curve of the earth. The physical horizon.
Curve of the earth.
What?
Geometric.
Oh, the double
The curve of the earth is the geometric.
No one ever said the physical geometric horizon, man.
Kosho, the curve
This
of
is
the
a term
earth
that
is
you
the
guys
geometric
just
horizon.
brought up like the past 3 months.
Kosho, the curve of the earth is the geometric horizon.
The curve of the earth is the geometric horizon. The one that you see is not that geometric horizon. The one you see is that location.
So the curve of the Earth is the geometric horizon. We just don't see it. So it's the one that's marked with an X labelled horizon, claimed to be blocking boats and buildings in the geometric, begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking Earth curve maths. But we won't see it, according to that particular clip from a Globe believer. Shout out to us so far. What is your definition of housekeeping questions? Housekeeping, in quotes, seems to be trending on other non-flat Earth channels. Housekeeping is a fairly common term. It's just something that you do at the beginning of anything. So in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial at the moment, before they let the jury in, they'll deal with their housekeeping, just keeping their paperwork in order, making sure anything that's not privy to the jury is dealt with without them being able to hear. That's their housekeeping. For us, all of the arguments that we've dealt with to date that have been concluded are summarised in the housekeeping question. So typically we start with any evidence of Earth curve because back in 2014, 2015 or whenever it was, through to maybe 2016, at the latest maybe 2017, we were talking about the Earth curve calculator and we've debunked Earth curve. We've shown how it's a begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator. So that's why it's asked if anybody wants to claim that there is Earth curve, because that's the primary claim. So as a matter of housekeeping, is there anybody out there claiming that there's Earth curve? We're just asking because that's the primary claim, but we just don't have it here for the audience to see that that's the case. Nobody's coming here telling us that they see Earth curve. Now, if an audience member comes and goes, hang on a minute, we see boats going over it, then that's why there's a link in the info box. But if they listen for more than 5 minutes, they'll realise that might not be such a great idea to come in and tell us, well, boats go over the horizon, because they'll find they'll have their ass handed to them in a very short space of time, won't they? So it's housekeeping. We use that term to say stuff that has been dealt with that might have some old dust blowing. So we just sweep that dust up before the show starts. Sometimes it takes the entire show, as is the case in many instances, because we end up covering that dust that's blown in.
It's right, though, because I do hear that in other genres about housekeeping. It seems like everybody's saying it now.
Yeah, it's just familiarity because we've started using the term. You just hear it where you might not have noticed it previously. It was Anthony that came up with it. He was like, we need to do some sort of housekeeping. Now, he's legal, and that term's far more prevalent in law than it is in general day-to-day use. Unless you're talking about in a hotel, which is a completely different context. But that's where it's derived from, right? Just keeping the house clean. This is our house.
Sometimes it's in vain, though, because people are still not understanding how they got the globe. Listen to this. When you unwrap a sphere to create flat map projection, we now have serious discrepancies.
And?
When you unwrap a sphere to create a flat map projection?
That's what they call them. They call them globe projections.
the sphere that you got from the flat Earth angle, elevation angle.
Right, I don't think they understand that.
Yeah, but they're stuck at the point where they're told that
understand it. It's okay.
here's a flat map, and the flat maps are what? A globe projection. So really, we're on a globe. Okay. And we go, no, your globe that your maps claim to be projected from was derived from the celestial sphere model and elevation angle measurements to Polaris. So the angles used to make that sphere to then project it on a flat Earth map to make it incorrect now? Yeah, that's not surprising.
Well, if you can argue for a tie, it's better than losing, right?
That's all it is. Argue for a tie in terms of which angle measurement we can ignore the quickest, and argue within the framework of having a globe model that hasn't, we don't mention that it's come from a flat plane. And then you can argue about how your map that just is flat works. And if it doesn't, well, it's because it's not a globe. And you can argue all day long in that false paradigm, false dichotomy.
A lot of the globe arguments are set up that way too. I don't know if it's intentional, but they're definitely set up that way to get you to make a false claim counter to their false claim and argue over which false claim is true.
Yeah, we discussed it a few times while you weren't here, actually, about the feast of nonsense that you arrive at when you fall down the hill. Get all sorts of garbage.
I was pretty lucky in that respect because I was on the other side until I found this place, so.
Good point. You did sidestep the feast of nonsense. That is a good point.
I got caught up right in it.
Me too. But I was skeptical. While I was very much, you can see the second most popular video on my show, on this channel, Nathan Oakley 1980, is the No Forests on Flat Earth Roundtable, actually hosted by Dave Weiss before his channel that it was originally on got taken down, and the re-up was done by me. But that's the only one that now remains, and it's the second most popular video that I have. I think I said that already. Anyway, the point is that throughout that discussion, everyone's all very excited about this new feast that we're feeding each other with, right? And I was sceptical the entire time, like I am generally speaking anyway, of no forests on a flat Earth. And I gave all my reasons in that discussion of why I was sceptical at the very early stage. And I have been typically sceptical from the outset. I got here and was like, wow, this is a very new arena to be in. What's going on? And the first thing I came across was Jesse Spots, I think his name was, talking about Mandela effect. Grr. So, I immediately fell out with him. Almost immediately, because I'm like, you are a load of nonsense. Do you not understand how this is just caused by that? And this is your misapprehension. This is a misunderstanding. This is you misforgetting. Why are you peddling this crap out into this new and exciting, obvious reality that we do live on a flat plane with talk of parallel dimensions and, I don't know, what was it they were talking about? Sleeper cells and people being fake replaced. What's that tall blonde chick that sings? What's her name? Very famous. Got invaded on stage by Kanye West. No?
Right, all that shit happens on the globe too, we all know that.
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift, that was right. They were claiming that Taylor Swift was like some bionic replacement, and there was just such a load of nonsense that you could find yourself immediately in, and that was really early days.
Right. The robot replacements of celebrities.
Yeah.
And then you got Tartaria and the mudslides. The mudslides and Tartaria was another one.
I mean, mudfloods, me and Arwin discussed that before it even became a thing. Didn't we, Arwin? One of your most popular shows, I think you called it The Mother of All Truth Bombs. Very popular video on Arwin's channel. Probably 6-7 years old now. And that is the subject we are discussing. We're looking at old remnants that's buried under the ground, massive skeletons. That's what we were talking about, right, Arwin?
Yeah, it's about 5 years ago. But yes, we did. And, we recognized what it all was very early on. And we knew that about one another and made a great show. And yeah, it has really unrolled exactly kind of like we both expected, I think.
Yeah, I think we knew it was the Feast of Nonsense back then, and it's just now we're able to put a term to it. But Either way, with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit the thanks button, and all that good stuff. Another massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
Like that flat sky nonsense. I didn't.
Why'd you feel that way, John?
Of course you don't, Neil.
No, because I had a talk with my son and I was using it. He was just pretty much tearing me apart. So I stopped saying flat sky.
Well, it's a logical inference you could draw, and there's nothing wrong with it. But it's just you don't know that. You know what I mean?
Right, that's the point. I don't know it because that's what he said to me. He said, "I can't validate. How can you validate that the sky is flat?"
It's not that. It's mirroring your surface, the distance. That's the whole part of that you have to understand. Is that if you just do a zenith, you have to assume a perpendicular, a flat baseline if you're using a plumb bob. Okay, and so what you're trying to do is figure out using the angular measurement of a sextant is where is the GP of that sun and what's the distance between you and it. That's the whole idea of a sextant, is to find out where the observer is. Well, when you shoot it with a sextant, you minus it from 90 to get the zenith angle. But the zenith angle has a reference line that mirrors the plane you live on. It's not saying the sky is flat.
Right, I gotcha. It could
Like
be,
I said,
right? I mean, it could be, right?
No. Well,
it can't be?
Say no. I don't think so. I mean, if you take the methodology that we're using, that's the point that Brian made several weeks ago, which is to say, if you imagine something that's really close to the horizon, ignore the distorted effect that you'll get below, say, 20 degrees. But let's just say it's 5 degrees above the horizon. Well, when you draw out your box with a vast distance, you've got a very long box with a parallel line running above it. But what, is the sky really, really low? Just because the star you're measuring is low to the horizon? No.
I got you.
Okay, well, that killed the conversation.
Anybody got anything in Discord?
Why didn't you ask in the live show?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I was responding to that last thing. Sorry. No, I was saying the key point to understand is that you've got parallel zeniths to each other. It's not diverging zeniths. It can never work with diverging zeniths, so that destroys a curved baseline. And so if you have a vertical zenith where the sun is, say, way out there to where it looks like it's touching the horizon, say it's 5 degrees up, and then where you are, those are two vertical zeniths, and the distance in between is the co-altitude. So that flat baseline that we see in the box is really mirroring what's the base, the Earth itself, not the sky.
But it's using arc. It's not using a flat line. It's using arc minutes. Not,
Correct.
Not straight, arc.
No, I'm saying that after that, you have to have a reference because you're on the flat plane. So what's it referencing? Is the distance on your flat plane is what I'm saying.
Yeah, the baseline's always flat. That's why I went through it with John giving his very clever disclaimers as he made the concessions that you're still going to need a baseline to get this angle. But the arc measurement of the thing you're looking at in the sky, well, the arc that it moves through as it recedes towards the horizon, that's what John's coming back at you with. That's not that movement with it dropping in angle is an arc measurement.
I agree with him. I'm totally agree with him. I may not have the language to get it across. I'm saying you're using it to prove the flat surface you're on.
Eli, you're causing audio chaos.
Can you go to that first reference of Andrew Thomas Young I put up, dip without refraction?
I like how you tease them with letting them think that they can get a geometric horizon into this argument nowadays. That's pretty funny, Tim.
What, with people like Ruhif? Okay, I've got you dipped to the geometric horizon, line of sight by observer, straight line. Is that the one?
Is the title Dip Without Refraction, Andrew Thomas Young?
No.
No, go to that one.
I don't think I've got it.
It's there. They're back to back. I got one where he says it is and one that says it isn't. Lot of writing. It's your OG picture. You'll see it.
Yeah, I know which one it is. I just can't see it in this Master B. Have you put it in Master B?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yes, it's at the top. I got it. Yeah,
all right. So dip without refraction, right?
Yes.
Okay. If you drop down to where the image starts and you see O on the dotted line, and it says because the observer's height is the apparent horizon lies below the astronomical one by the angle DG. Now, it's better because he did it very confusing. Astronomical is height of eye. just forget this big word astronomical. That dotted line is the height of eye where the guy's got a sextant. And you need either to do it the two-way method to get it, elevation angle, then subtract from 90, or you can use a plumb bob and get this dotted line to be the surface of the Earth representative. You see what they're doing here?
Did you want the next slide?
No, it's just my point that this is when he says astronomical, you're thinking space or way out there. It's height of eye. It's the sextant or his eye line where he's standing. A baseline to his eye line. The dotted line is a 180 straight angle at his eye line. He's calling that the astronomical one. Well, guess what? That has to be the same as the Earth because of the two zeniths. One of the observer, O, and one of the star, wherever that is, because diverging zeniths don't work.
Well, could it be said that astronomy has nothing to do with celestial navigation?
Well, you're using stars and luminaries that are in the book, and you know where they are every hour, minute, second of the day. So you're using those luminaries that are over a flat plane. And we know that because of the angle measuring device. It can't work unless it's on a flat plane. But when you say, I'm not going to use the plane, I'm going to use my eye line, then you've got to have a horizontal at your eye line, which mirrors the surface you're on, or it won't work.
Right. My point is that astronomy is a very specific field that is based on heliocentric conception, and it's not really relevant what they do in terms of what you actually use in celestial navigation, where you're just dealing with the angles, right?
Well, if you look
at this, to do with their heliocentric astronomy world that they've conjured within astronomy.
if you look at this image, the diagram next to what I read, this curved dingleberry has nothing to do with what he wrote either, but they stick it in. So yeah, maybe in astronomy there's some good points, and then they stick in all their other points to make it heliocentric. Yes, just like he does here.
Right, because that's what astronomy does, right? That's really the what all these astronomists end up doing throughout history.
Yeah, but astronomy doesn't belong to the loser of the argument. Astronomy belongs to flat earthers because that's how it works. I'm not going to let these guys, just because they're heliocentric, hijack astronomy and say it works on a heliocentric model.
Yeah, stars.
I understand, but my point is that astronomy really is like a conjuration. Because you're just using celestial navigation. That's just what it is. It's celestial navigation. It's focused on the navigation, and it uses the celestial lights and their angles and like how we know they're arranged, apparently, right? And astronomy is the conjuration of the heliocentric conception of making these virtual places out of the lights.
Well, what's the look up astronomy? Tell me what it means.
So, are you saying that celestial navigation is more astronomy than astronomy?
Yes, I am. Because when I think astronomy, I remember my mother taking a course in it for her master's. She would come home. I was young then, of course, and she'd be talking about the stars and astronomy, how it's different than astrology, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, it's the heavens, right? Study of the heavens, astronomy. I mean, unless someone wants to look it up.
Let me read the definition.
Okay.
Because this is funny. The branch of science, astronomy, the branch of science which deals with celestial objects, space, and the physical universe as a whole. That's the definition.
I got a different definition from Google.
Go on, what's yours? And then I'll tell you.
Science.
Mine was Google.
Well, hold on, let's just get Arwin's, and if someone else can type into a Google search astronomy, but then etymology afterwards, and see what that comes up with. But go on, Arwin. Let's have your definition next.
So the Google yield, it is unlinked, right? Typical. Astronomy is the study of everything in the universe beyond Earth's atmosphere. There you go. First conjuration of heliocentrism. That includes objects, physicality, assumption, bias, we can see with our naked eyes, like the sun, moon, planets, and stars. It also includes objects we can only see with telescopes or other instruments, like faraway galaxies and tiny particles.
Okay. Did anybody look up the etymology of the word astronomy?
I'm looking now.
I got him.
Who's is it Arwin? Have you got it presented, Arwin?
Yeah.
Go on then.
Astronomy from Greek. I can't read that. Astron, star, law, or culture. So it's like star, law, culture.
Giving them names. Quasar? Yeah, where's that come from? It's come from astronomers. They've given it a name. Binary star? Where's that come from? It's come from astronomers. Black hole? Where's that come from? It's come from these people giving stuff in the sky names. What's astrology? We've already got the first part of the etymology, right? It means star, doesn't it? What do you think?
Astro comes from the Greek astron, meaning star. The Greek astron is also related to such words as asteroid and even to star itself. The word astronomy comes from a Greek word that literally and poetically means star arranging.
There you go. Arranging.
Star arranging.
Well,
wow.
Arranging. I'd say naming.
I got the definition of worship. Astrology is worship of heavenly objects.
Well, that's incorrect. What does the second part of the word mean? We know what the first bit means. It means star. What do you think the other bit means? Astrology.
Names.
Astronaming.
Oh, logic of the astro. It's celestial logic. It's just...
Exactly. Just the patterns, documenting the patterns that they make. That's it.
Right. Yeah, Wikipedia's got a real hit piece on astrology. And Google refused to give just a baseline definition of it. That stood out to me in my search. But yeah, Wikipedia definitely immediately starts astrology is a pseudoscience. And then it starts to conjure up like relative positions of celestial objects, already conjuring up the astronomy heliocentric conception.
That's correct. The second part's correct. Read that again. Read it again. The positioning of celestial objects.
Yeah.
Well, that means where they are. So the logic of the sky?
No, but objects. It's conjuring objects.
Forget the physicality assumption bias. Sorry, I didn't pick up on you, mate. I don't mean to decry that. Yes, fine. But what I'm saying is, what they're describing is just where they are, right?
Well, that's roughly paraphrasing it.
Right.
Yeah.
So where they'll be in the sky.
Right.
Right. Well, that's fairly straightforward. Why is it suddenly a pseudoscience? This star will be at this place at this time. That's not pseudoscience. Nobody's claiming cause and effect relationships, but they've labelled it because they are, presumably the people labelling it, the actual pseudoscientists when they claim that astronomy is going to be the actual science, because that's what they labelled that, didn't they? So they decry the logic of the stars, basically the acquisition of the patterns, as being pseudoscience. It's like, who claimed it was cause and effect reasoning, establishing hypothesis? Nobody's claiming that. Oh, the converse is, isn't it? That's their field of naming shit in the sky. Black holes, quasars.
Right, they're projecting their predicament onto astrology.
Exactly.
It says Copernicus is the father of astronomy.
There you go. We live in a Copernican world. Or we did. We don't.
Ologies are branches of learning, aren't they? And nomies are just a system of rules and laws. Doesn't matter what you put in front of it, but in terms of the Latin, so biology, etc., that's got study, learn in it, whereas onomies, astronomy is just a set of rules and systems. It's not necessarily inquisitive as to any more detail. It's just the laws, the sun orbits at this.
And what are laws? Descriptions of stuff, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's
I
fundamentally law
oversimplify it.
In the describing sense of it's like a natural law sort of thing. It's not necessarily attributing cause. It's just observational law.
Just describing stuff in the sky. I say naming stuff in the sky. I oversimplify it, but same difference. That's a black hole, and this is how it works.
I agree. I use it like that too. Etymology is very resourceful for understanding deeper patterns in language and people using them. Right. And often you get a better insight than the people using it actually have as to what they're doing, even outside of their own consciousness. So, yeah, I agree. Astronomy is the naming of stars. Astrology is basically patterns derived logically from the stars.
Yep.
Well, you have to be careful with using the epidemiology of a word, because you can easily fall into a fallacy when you do it. So you have to look at the definition.
No, good point. I should have dropped that in at the end. Yeah, let's not suggest for 1 second that just because the etymological background of a word has such a description, that's the current use or meaning of the word. That would be an etymological fallacy.
Well, it depends, of course, of the context by which somebody uses it, right?
Yeah, and we're looking at that
different
history.
Approaches through culture have been used. You might be referring to that. It will all show itself by how you're gonna talk about it.
Correct, but I'm saying that if you look at the history of how the word has developed and come to be used in the colloquial sense now, you end up at this two opposing positions. One, and we won't rehash what we've just described in terms of the meanings of these words, astrology, that's decried as pseudoscience. The other, claimed and held up as science. That's where you end up. In terms of the history of progression, you can see that in the word and how it's changed, or the words and how their meanings have been ascribed. That's all we're doing. We're not saying that suddenly it means the etymology anymore. I'm not doing that, or I hope I wasn't implying that that's what we should do. John,
I always do my best to basically uphold the original powers of words, to not downplay them in favor of contemporary approaches, right?
Well, you can here, because we are, generally speaking, almost every stage going through the Socratic method, and we're doing that in fine detail right now. But typically, no, you can't, because most people will just accept the colloquial definition of a meaning of a word when you use it in context colloquially. If you say science to somebody, they will just assume that you just mean whatever you say has been proven. Again, back to the Johnny Depp trial. Last time it was Dr. Curry, the psychologist, saying that this is just science, which it isn't. And more recently, her opposing counterpart on the defence's side was saying, all I did was formulate hypotheses. That's what she said. And you're like, oh my God. All they're doing is throwing in more and more scientific vernacular to bolster their jargon. That's all they're doing.
Right, technobabble. It's technobabble to boost appearances.
It's a magic trick.
Well, Amber Heard's lawyers messed up because they made her technobabble, that Curry ladies, they made it seem like it was empirical and cross. They really screwed up.
Yes, that was where I was going with that. You start off with one person hijacking a little bit of science and saying, I just follow the forms and take it where the science leads me. That was originally paraphrasing what Dr. Curry said. Then as the defence, you start leading in with there's more credence and more science to what we are doing here in this method. You're like, well, then you're lending more credence to the scientific validity, not that it has it, that the other side has suggested, because they suggested it more subtly and more effectively. So you're right, they're actually bolstering the other side, who's actually the only person who's done what could be seen as a legitimate series of tests on the subject, Amber Heard. So yeah, they're literally bolstering the opponent's side. There's been a lot of that, though, hasn't there?
Yeah, it's like Johnny Depp.
You're breaking up.
You know what's funny? I was just talking yesterday in Geo server, and Brenda was there, and we were talking about gravitational lensing. So ultimately, it got to the point where Brenda asks me if I know what the scientific method is. I was like, yeah. She was like, explain it to me. I was like, no. And then, so she says, well, it's observation, then it's hypothesis, then it's experiment, yada, yada, yada.
Not bad.
And I'm like, yeah, right. And then I asked her, I said, do you think that it should be specifically in that order? She says, yes. And then I said, then why would you lead with they had Einstein's theory and then made a prediction and then made an observation, which is completely the opposite of the order that you just gave?
And what was the response?
I can't remember. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but that's how it went. And basically, she was trying to say that they went through the scientific experiment to figure it out, and she also admitted to me that it was ass backwards.
Right. Well, sounds like you're making progress with her. Good for you.
It's that observation, isn't it?
Observation of natural phenomena.
Yeah, exactly. It's that distinguishment. It's not just an observation. I've looked at something. It's not just that, is it? Hence why a shoe isn't a natural.
They do have a way of getting around that, though. So if we'll take the example, don't be chuckling because I'm not trying to be absurd. You take the shoe, and then you put it in front of you, and you've just got a shoe, right? So not a phenomenon. We all agree. But if you close your eyes and then open them again, there it is again, right? There's a shoe again. So technically, phenomena.
Well, what's the phenomena that you, with your mind, can make shoes disappear?
Shoe is the phenomena. I just explained why.
Can I give the Brenda answer?
How did it already be food?
Don't send it into Dr. Bob absurdity. Hold on, John. Yeah, what? Neil's just dropped in an absurd conversation between Dr. Bob. I forget. I've spoken to him such a long time ago now. Is it Dr. Bob? Is that what it's
Bob
called?
the fallacy guy.
Bob the fallacy. Bob the science guy. I knew I'd get there in the end. Right, and him and Brenda are having a conversation about I don't know what, because it descends into the ludicrous absurdity of him asking a question and then a complete non sequitur answer coming from Brenda about how did they know to be food, and then him patting her on the back and telling her how wonderful she is, even though they're completely talking at cross purposes. But that's fairly typical standard baller behaviour. They pat each other on the back no matter what they're saying, as long as they believe in a ball, to the point where they'll completely talk past each other and agree with nonsensical statements that don't coincide with each other. Anyway, thank you for that, Neil. John, go ahead. My bad.
Oh, no, I was laughing about it. The phenomenal existence of that shoe is what Brenda would say.
Exactly. Or a table.
I just want to know if that was Brenda's sole argument.
Well, the distance on that table is dependent on the time it takes you to measure it.
Came from her tongue.
All I know is the hole in a donut, that's space-time. Quote.
Oh, let's lace this up anyway.
Let's lace this up.
How long is the show running for?
Approximately 2 hours, just over.
Lace, run, shoe.
That's good job you recovered that. That was a show-ending jinx.
Very good pun.
Jokes.
I like the dog bone theory, though. That is in theory, because it's a dog bone. And I like to describe our show and what Nathan does is like biting down on Globers like a dog. Rawr! So dog bone theory, it's just, you know.
Well, it sounds like Brenda's almost there.
Yes.
It sounds like she's almost there. Hopefully with a little bit more, effort, you can train her.
Wait, did I hear him say that she agreed that it was ass backwards? Did I hear correct?
Brenda has said a lot of weird things.
Shall I go for a third pun that'll slip through without people noticing?
I thought all your puns were pretty good.
Go for it.
No, you stopped me at the pre-show. You can't do this. You violated.
Nobody stopped me because nobody noticed.
I gotta wait all the way.
Mine slipped by undetected.
No, it didn't. I got it.
Got what? There was two.
I didn't. Can somebody explain the joke
No,
to me?
absolutely not.
Aren't you the
Not
one that
allowed.
said? Aren't you the one that said let's lace this up?
No, you can't say that.
No.
Chocolate?
No, there's two more.
If you don't get
ones.
the pun, you gotta wait for the re-up of the show. That's the rule.
Okay.
It's the least they can do.
Because I'm still waiting for 10th Man's one.
I don't want to change the rule in that regard. I don't want to flip-flop about it.
I don't want to do that.
Flip-flop.
Have you guys seen any of like Jim Bob going at it against Brenda? Brenda really likes Jim Bob. She's constantly coming on, calling in. Again yesterday, and Jim Bob is a very staunch fan of the flat Earth debates. He knows the arguments. He's been listening. You can tell.
So he hands her ass to her, or what?
What?
He said she keeps going on his show.
Yeah, of course. No, but Jim Bob is like kind of on another level. He's like a real psychologer, and he's like he can tolerate her, but still like uphold the right arguments. Right? He's really he knows what he's doing.
Psychologist just double Dutch to me, I'm afraid, Arwin.
I hate that expression. No, but check it out, right?
It's like ignoring her. I caught a bit, Arwin. You posted that link, so I went and just caught a bit. And it was tolerating is probably the right word.
Yeah, but still retaining your skill quality while doing it. You know, that's what Jim Bob's like really good at. And he just keeps going. It's like it just seems completely tireless.
Can you give your channel amazing. A proper plug, Arwin?
Yeah. Well, he's in my favorite list on my YouTube channel, of course.
No, plug
I'll
him,
link you up.
Not you.
What?
I said plug him, not you. Well, he's in my favourites list. Oh, is he? On your channel, ARWIJN Arwin.
Yeah,
Subscribe
that's
today.
where you can find it. Yeah. No, I'll link you up.
Is that like a double plug?
Yes, it is. Yes, Arwin will do this all day if I don't stop him.
Stunning marketing, Arwin, that. How to find Jim Bob, go to Arwin's channel.
It's made by Jim Bob YouTube channel. Correct, Arwin? Available at all good Arwin channels.
Correct. I posted the link to his channel in Masterby.
That's no good for the audience. Just spell out his name again.
Made by Jim Bob. He's got his own intro song and everything. This guy is a cartoonist. He's very good with graphics. He's very sophisticated in his language, very well spoken, and he just has a lot of range in expertises, right? Is very interesting person, very free-minded, very about truth, really. It resonates a lot with me.
I was noticing it was getting a bit Bible-y as well the other day. There seems to have a fundamentalist guy on and a guy with a different opinion. There was a few interesting chits and chats that were going off. So
that's Made by Jim Bob channel. Check him out. Subscribe today. But with that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, hitting the PayPal links, smashing the thanks button, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!